The memories, they have a lot of issues attached to them. Do they still count? I don't know. Are the feelings real now that the timeline's going differently? I don't know. What do I do about them? I don't know. I never knew. Today, we'll be examining Trailer Trash by FourtySixtyFour. Join me as we discover hidden literary treasures here on the Bored Goddess Book Reviews. Welcome to the first ever episode of the Bored Goddess Book Reviews. Hi, I'm the Bored Goddess, and this is Mad Max, my official ratings duck. He doesn't squeak, sadly, but he does know his books. Let me introduce myself. I am a gamer, a cosplayer, and an unapologetic, dyed-in-the-wool book nerd. I have a passion for little-known fiction of all genres written by indie authors. Because of my obsession, I'm on a constant hunt for fascinating stories that can sometimes go unnoticed by the general reading public. I was really surprised, despite the universe of brilliant stories out there, at how few of these wonderful pieces of fiction were actually being shared and promoted by YouTube creators. Frankly, I don't care if a book is perfect. What matters is that the story is actually written. Of course, writing is a skill, and to create something that may have taken years to develop, edit, and publish in this crazy world takes enormous courage. Let me just say, I am incredibly grateful for every single indie author out there who offers up these little pieces of their souls despite the fear of judgment from the grammar police or the critics who don't understand that writing truly is an art. And that's why I'm here. It's time to give the hardworking authors a true shout out for their amazing work. Right, Max? So every Wednesday here on Bored Goddess Book Reviews, we'll be discussing one wonderful piece of interesting, though possibly obscure, fiction. Of course, that doesn't mean we won't cover more well-known and well-loved books, especially those that have and continue to make an influence in my life. Now and then we'll not just spotlight those, but also introduce some fascinating web novels. All I ask of you in return is to smash that like button to tickle the algorithm's fancy. And while you're at it, please do click subscribe. It's free, and every time we hit a subscription milestone, I'll add something fun, like a Q&A live stream or an interview with one of the talented authors whose books I review. Oh, and while you're there pressing all of those happy buttons, don't forget to poke that silly little bell notification so you can be alerted when I upload my next video. So let's get right into today's book. I'm reviewing a self-published urban fantasy called Trailer Trash by FourtySixtyFour. A brief warning before we get into it. This book does contain cursing and some strong psychological scenes which may trigger more sensitive readers. Here's a fun fact. This author initially wrote this story on a website called Royal Road. This site is a free bank of unlimited stories of all genres, and it's a great way to lose yourself for hours in new worlds and characters. It hosts thousands of web novels, short stories, and novellas. Many of the authors are extremely prolific and they update consistently. And quite a few of these tales continue for years. There are some real gems to be found within its millions of pages. This is a story about Tabitha Moore, a 60-year-old woman in the year 2045. She enters the hospital for an MRI scan to determine why her headaches won't stop. During the process, there seems to be a shift in her consciousness, and she wakes up in the year 1998, back in her 13-year-old overweight body, living in poverty. Just as before, with zero social skills, she is bullied by everyone. Even the sisters of her one and only friend torment her with threats and then assault her, leaving her with a concussion. Her dad is loving, but simple. her emotionally shattered mom is verbally abusive. That is, when she isn't being negligent. Left with no alternative but to relive the difficult times of her adolescence, poor Tabby faces an uphill road, either by repeating the events of her formative years, or by trying to fix her life the second time around. I chose this particular book while trolling Amazon looking for an urban fantasy with a strong female lead. Sometimes these specific searches yield unsatisfying results. Despite the epic story ideas or fantastic character development by an author, there's just something missing in the story that leaves me feeling unsatisfied after completing the book. Trailer Trash, though, surprised me from the start. The first thing which struck me was this book was so well written. I find some books, despite their well-constructed paragraphs, become very clunky or dry as the story carries forward. Others, even if they're flawed, has an intangible something that pulls you inside and it won't let go. Trailer Trash covered all the points by which I judge the quality of a book. First, the story must be one where my mind stops seeing words on a page and becomes mentally visual, like watching a movie but without a soundtrack. This book did that on steroids. Second, I need to empathize with the characters. Not just their personalities, but to really get inside their heads and care about what happens to them as individuals. Right from the start, this book delivered, not just with Tabby, but also in the emotions I formed about her mom, her dad, her grandmother, her cousins, her first real friend, and even her enemies. I also loved, beyond the well-crafted story, the way in which the author handles the familiar arc of time travel. Now, the concept of journeying backwards and forwards through time is not new. We've seen this in everything from books, shows, and movies. At the core of the book, it's another Back to the Future sort of deal. Tabitha returns to her teenage years to face the nightmares of bullying, awkward social occasions, and physical changes experienced by anyone who has ever been through middle and high school. It's also something everyone has dreamed about more than once. Who hasn't thought about going back and experiencing a do-over? I mean, I can't be the only one who has parts of their past they feel could have been fixed to make their current life so much better. And I am not just speaking about money. There's the relationships that were broken, or the ones forged, but would have been so much better had they never been started in the first place. The psychology of such an event, however, tends to be overlooked. Not so with this book. For once, an author took the time to seriously consider the reality of this concept. And that is a lofty achievement in my mind. In time travel fiction, all too often, the main characters are the type to shrug and roll with it. The protagonist in this book, however, seems to really feel the need to change, and aggressively does not roll with it, at least at first. Further, I loved how utterly believable the characters were throughout the book. Not just the dialogue, not just the world, but also on a personal level. Having been close to the main character's own 13 years during 1998, I remember that time and even grew up in a not-so-dissimilar economic circumstance. But even beyond the not-so-great reminiscences, the ability to glimpse inside the characters' heads, their motivations, and their struggles, as well as understanding their thought processes, makes this story amazing. I was really affected by the trauma of Tabitha's existence of nearly 6 decades. Her life, unexciting and full of regrets, had been inundated with difficulties. She had managed to accept her life for what it was and had tried to move forward, but suddenly found herself back in a body she hated, in a school that either ignored her as if she were invisible, or bullied her as the disgustingly gross poor kid. It's hard to envision how cruel kids can be to other kids who might be living in extreme poverty. Tabby's only crime was being unable to afford clothes that fit, or a lack of resources in order to regularly wash her clothes. Cheap food left her unhealthy, overweight and living in an unhygienic mess. It leaves the reader wondering how she managed to make it through childhood at all the first time around. To be honest, there was very little I didn't love about this book. The pacing is good, the story idea is thought-provoking, and the characters are awesome. Okay, so there's a few grammatical issues throughout. But they're rare, and I didn't find they detracted from the book at all. If I had anything to complain about, it's that I'm an addict and I'm impatient for the next update. My one Achilles heel when I find books I love, I always want more to feed my binge-a-thon nature. So hurry up, 4064, I need my fix. And now it's time to rate this week's book, Re-Trailer Trash. What do you think, Max? Should we give this the rarest of Board Goddess ratings? I think so too. This, my friends, is a highly recommended 5-duck book. I have linked to the Amazon page below and to the author's Royal Road page in case you want to read some more of their work. Have any of you read this book? Please do tell me your thoughts in the comments below. What did you love or not like whatsoever about this story? If you have a favorite little-known indie novel, please feel free to leave me a comment. So that you know, I now have a website so that you can formally submit your requests either as an author or as a reader for me to review a book. The link to the website is in the description below. And speaking of getting out there in the big wide internet, I'm on Discord, Instagram, Goodreads, and Twitter, all of which are also linked in the description below. Say hi when I don't have my nose in a book. I'm always up for a book chat. So guys, that's it for now. Thank you so much for hanging with me. May your day be epic, and may awesomeness follow you like a sad puppy needing hugs. See you next Wednesday. Bye all. Others, if what was that again? Though flawed? Yeah. Who hasn't thought about going back and experiencing a do-over? Like I've done many times. Blame my tongue, not me. Rather than, I don't know.